Welcome back to the Life Legacy Podcast. Today, I'm excited to have a unique episode with you guys. Mostly, it's always about the guest, and today, I'm kind of the guest. We're sharing and uploading a podcast together, and I'm here with Mason Woodward, which we have a family dynamic where we've grown up with each other in a way, and so it's exciting to get to catch up with you again. And we're also going to be publishing this on your podcast. And Mason, what's your podcast called?
The Suffer on Purpose podcast.
The Suffer on Purpose podcast. So stay tuned. We're excited.
Well, Jaxon, dude, it's so good to catch up with you, dude. It's kind of strange to like be in this position right now because I just always viewed the Cummings family, right? I always hung out with Cooper, and like seeing you now, like you're 2 years younger than me, which is weird. I've just always known you as this little. You probably get that a lot from family and friends, but it's really cool to
just
see.
Being little, yeah.
No, it's just really cool to see all that you've been doing, and it's kind of funny. So I do door to door, and heard about your brother, and then a video that you were doing came up on my Explore page or something, and I was like, oh wow, this is Jaxon. and then I just kind of did some more research diving into it, and it's just super inspiring. And so I just want to thank you for that, like for all you've been doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
And thank you for the gift too.
Of course.
But yeah, dude, so just for, at least for my listeners, give us a super quick background of like your story.
Yeah. Background of my story. A condensed version. I grew up with 4 crazy brothers, and our family dynamic was super fun. We have always been breaking bones. We're always in the hospital playing sports, and just a house of chaos, which I don't know. I'm really grateful that I didn't have like the cookie cutter perfect family. There's always so much going on. Each brother has such a strong personality. And so growing up, I always had this side of me that I felt pretty invincible. And I've always thought I'm better at things than I actually am. And for that reason, I've broken over 15 bones. Then when I was in about 7th grade, my parents got a divorce. My dad had built a beautiful life for us, and then on the outside it kind of looked perfect, and then it was crumbling on the inside. Had a good amount of time where I didn't have a relationship with God, and then I had some special moments that brought me to him, and he came to me. Then I have been on this drive to try and help make a difference in people's lives and inspire them to upgrade the quality of their life. And I then have started some businesses, and right now I run a company called Your Life Legacy, where we help capture people's lives and their stories. So imagine like a Netflix documentary about your parents or grandparents. That's what we give to these families, and we're partnered with Family Search. It's really fun, and I believe it's the most effective way to capture someone's life and their story to make sure the future generations learn from it. And then as well, I host the Life Legacy podcast, and it's been beautiful to kind of get some of the fruits of our labors in both those things, and we're starting to see the influence and impact that we can have as people to change the world. So that is what I'm kind of working on. That's a little bit of the life story for you.
That's awesome, man. What were you doing at the time that like sparked the idea for this?
And when you say the idea for this,
for the business and the podcast?
Yeah. So two separate sparking moments, I guess. So with the Life Legacy, or Your Life Legacy, the video company where we capture people's lives, it started just with my dad. My dad, Mark Cummings, he's got a crazy life story, and just like some fathers, I really looked up to him, and I was able to learn so many amazing life lessons from his life and his story, what he was able to achieve. And he instilled a belief in me that I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to, and there's no ceiling to the success that we can all have. It's just if we're willing to sacrifice and work for it. But so I was like, Dad, I want my future kids and grandkids to know who changed the Cummings legacy. Like, and it's you, you need to write a book. Like, you have to do something to capture your life story. And after bugging him for about 5 years, he just never picked up a pen or pencil. He's a serial entrepreneur, never made time for something like that.
Yeah.
And one day I was watching a Netflix documentary and I just got hit by a train as I was watching someone kind of tell their life story. I was like, I want this for my dad. This is exactly like the coolest way that I could share my dad's story for my kids and grandkids. And so I started looking into all the solutions, and it seemed to be the case of, um, either a person that could do this would it'd be pretty cheap and really not well done that well, or it was going to cost me $50,000 to $100,000 to capture my dad's life and his story in the quality that I was wanting. With that, I was like, you know what? There's got to be a middle ground. And so one of my best friends, his father is a cinematographer and done commercials for Chevrolet and bigger stuff, been in the industry for a long time. I was like, hey, let's go capture a couple people's stories because I don't want to learn on my dad's. We got to learn on other people. And so the first one was actually Jody Hazen.
Oh, wow.
And so we did these two documentaries, and they turned out way better than I could have ever expected. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I was like, okay, Dad, let's start preparing to tell your story. And he was on board. And so we were preparing to tell his story. And while we were preparing, he actually passed away unexpectedly.
Oh, wow.
And so when that happened, I felt this giant regret. And I just remember being at his casket, feeling pretty sad about the whole situation overall. But I also had this big gut feeling to help capture my dad's life story. And I didn't fulfill that. And that hurt. But then I had the aha moment of, you know what? People are dying left and right, and their life is just becoming meaningless. I learned that even if someone's made a giant impact like my father, after 2 to 3 generations, if their story isn't captured effectively, they will just be forgotten. So we have all these beautiful, amazing successes and failures and all this learning that needs to be passed on that is not being passed on because we have not accepted the obligation that we all have is to take care of the future that's coming. And one of the most effective ways to do that is by telling our own life stories and the good and bad of it all. And so when I realized that, I was like, you know what? I need to create the most effective and efficient way to capture someone's life and their story. And that was when Your Life Legacy got started.
Wow. That's a really cool story. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure you're, in the business world, you're kind of familiar with Alex Hormozy,
Yeah.
but he talks about that principle of like you might as well do what you want to do, create what you want to create, because in a couple of generations, everybody's gonna kind of forget about you. But it is interesting that you took that and you're like, oh, I'm gonna solve a problem then, and try to capture that legacy that people are leaving behind, because that is really, it is almost sad that to think of, I just wish, like my great grandfather, I named my son after him. And I just think like, I wish we had some like physical evidence or something of him that I could show like my kids, because of the impact he had but yeah, I think it's really cool what you're doing, because it's almost like scripture,
Yeah.
It's capturing these people's lives. And I'm sure a lot of them talk about faith within that whole journey that they went through. And so we can take so many lessons from that.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I feel like some of the best businesses that get started come from either solving their own life problem or coming from a situation that brought so much regret that they had no other option than create a solution that fit in the box that they needed and wanted. And that was for sure the case for me. And Yeah, I wish it was something that I saw beforehand and not had to deal with the regret. But from that regret, we've been able to work with hundreds of families to capture their loved ones' stories in crucial moments. And something I feel so lucky to be a part of is they do share some of the most unreal advice, life stories, miracles, spiritual things, their failures, their successes, these things that you just know, like if their child is hearing this, if their grandchild is hearing this, this is going to help change their life.
Yeah.
And I just get to be a fly on the wall and be a small part of it. But I'm getting like a PhD on how to live a successful life through doing this. And so I feel really grateful that it's part of my world.
What's the biggest regret you've heard from someone that you have interviewed?
Um,
Or I should rephrase that. What's the biggest regret, the most common regret from these like older generation folks?
yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people see, but just the core family relationships, if they're ever put off as not number one or number two, they will have that regret almost always. And family and core relationships is the key to a fulfilled life. There's a bunch of keys to it, but um, when that is neglected, you can build as much success and as much legacy as you want, but there's going to be emptiness inside because you know that the people that you need to be close with, have you don't have the relationship that you want. And when someone's on their deathbed, they don't care to show you their diplomas or their bank account number. They don't care about that at all. They just want to be with their loved ones, you know.
Yeah, dude, that's a hard balance. I talk about that a lot when it comes to like, we say work life balance. I like to call it like work life integration, but especially like being married, having kids, it's a tough balance between like ambition and presence, like being fully present with the family, but you're thinking in the back of your head like, oh well, I got all these dreams and aspirations, right? And yeah, that's something I really try to hone in on every day of like being as present as possible. And it's really tough, but I think yeah, like you said, like doing that, I think it's gonna lead to a much more fulfilling life.
Yeah. And me personally, I don't care for work life balance. I think there's seasons,
Mm.
and there's really critical seasons in raising a family in certain points in a child's life where they need their love and support by their parents, or there's really important seasons in business where if you're lacking there, then like there has to be some give and take. And it's when those seasons turn into years and years, and you neglect some of the four fundamental things of living the art of fulfillment, which a huge part of my life. I I was with my dad one day. We always talked about business, which I'm really grateful that he just
Really, that was like your main
we always
topic
did.
of
Yeah.
conversation, huh?
I
That's
uh
cool.
I would always get out of the car, go pick up the real estate paper of whatever new houses for sale. We'd go walk through construction buildings and houses being built and just talk and be involved and wondering what's going on, how much margin they're going to make on this sell.
Wow. How
And
old were you when you talked about this stuff? Like,
it's for as long, like from 5 years old, I remember
really?
getting out of the car and like going and getting, the for sale sign
That's cool.
and looking at it.
That's
But
wise of you to even be asking those kinds of questions and
oh,
curiosity of that. That's really cool.
oh, it was
I
thrown
would have
up
been
on
like,
me. Yeah, like it wasn't really an option. It's like, hey, go go do this,
yeah.
and then you just kind of start to enjoy it and know it's like part of your life. But he was able to do very well financially, and I remember there was one time where he had built his dream house and all those things, and we were sitting and talking, and he had never talked about his actual net worth with me, like actual
Mm.
numbers. It was very rare that that was ever a thing, but it was more about the building and all that. But I remember having a conversation, and he told me his net worth, and as a as like a 12-year-old, I remember being kind of stunned and a little bit confused
Mm.
because my dad had built, quote unquote, everything that, someone wants to achieve. And I remember there just standing there and being like, I'm confused because you have everything what people want, but I don't want your life exactly. Like, how could that be? And that's when I really learned that a lot of people can live a successful life in a lot of aspects, but live unfulfilled. And so then it took me on this journey of how to create a fulfilled life and what is the art of fulfillment.
Mm.
And so that's taken me, and I've done some research on that, and what the research shows and the science backed everything is that there's four core things that you need, and the fourth is cut into two. But first, you need to believe in something bigger than yourself, and this is where people accredit God and like the bigger plan. Number two, you need close family relationships, like strong family relationships. And third is friendships. You need close friendships. And fourth is cut into two, where with your working field, you need to be achieving what you feel like your life purpose is in the work life. But the other side of that is you need to be serving. And so those are like the key metrics that you need to be progressing in at all times.
Mm.
And that is what has shown to be how to live a successful, fulfilled life.
That's really cool. Did you come up with those by yourself, or did you get those from like
No,
Man's Search for Meaning or
yeah,
books?
a
Like
lot of different things, but the main ones are from Tony Robbins,
Mm.
who studied that a ton, and Arthur Brooks, who he was a professor at Harvard who specifically studied the art of happiness and how to live a fulfilled life. And those are
Mm.
a couple of my people that I like to learn from.
Yeah, that's really cool. What is what's the thing you love most about your dad?
Um, I've had like five things come up as you've said that, but he was very authentic to who he is. And like you talk about crossing a line, my dad wouldn't tiptoe by it. He would jump over it. And
Yeah.
like whatever the situation was, he was just gonna own it. And he was the MC at every place. Everyone always wanted him to be like the talking man because he just brought so much joy and humor and happiness to life. And then there's this whole other side of him that was so Christ-like, of him giving. Like I've heard and got to see so many little moments of my dad just being someone's hero in their life situation that they really needed him. And it wasn't even like they didn't know that he was going to be their saving person,
Mm.
but he stepped up when he didn't need to all the time. And so a couple like little examples of my dad's care and charity that mean a lot to me. I remember one time we were in Mexico at this store and we're on vacation, and this just shows like my dad cares about the insignificant people, like caring about everyone. So there was a secretary at where we like to stay, and he heard that it was her daughter's birthday. And so I remember we were in this grocery store for over 45 minutes, and we're like, "Dad, what are you doing?" He's like, "I got to find the perfect gift for the secretary's daughter." He had no need to do that. And that's just like, he would do those things. He, um, I did a documentary with my brothers about my dad and his life story, and I got to hear some really special experiences of how he stepped up for each of his kids in a really special way. And there was a time where my one of my family members was going through a really hard moment in his life, and I don't think anyone knew the extent of it. But I guess my dad found him in a closet with a gun,
Mm.
and he he said that dad not only like tried to help the situation, he took him out of the situation completely. That day my dad got on a plane with his son and just let him be with my dad in a different country to take him out of everything and understand what's going on. And it saved his life 1000%. And another time, my brother had one of the biggest breakups of his life, of the person he thought he was going to be with forever, and he wasn't doing too hot. And my dad's like, "Hey, let's go." And his thing was he would travel with us on
Mm.
his own when he would spend the individual time with all the kids while he's sacrificing his work life in that moment, where he would, like with that son, he went for a week, and he's like, "Hey, are you feeling better? Do you want to stay longer? We can do whatever you need." And he's like,
That's a long time. That's crazy.
I want to stay longer." And so week 2 comes by, and he's like, "Hey, how are you feeling? Are you ready to go?" And he stayed for a couple more days after that, while he's got his business that has all these, fires going on,
Yeah.
and it's totally being neglected because his son needs him. And there, I could go on,
Yeah. No,
and
that's really cool.
but yeah, just a great example of human kindness and craziness too.
Yeah.
In a good way for most of the time. And
Yeah.
so
No,
yeah.
I didn't know him super well. I wasn't super close with him, but the one of the memories I have is I'm pretty sure for probably 4 or 5 years in a row of my childhood, we would go to Cabo and we would stay in your guys' house in Cabo, your dad's house, and that was like such a fun time.
Oh yeah.
I remember that, and he would just like let us go there. But yeah, I think with you kind of mentioned when you were younger, like your belief and your confidence that you had, where you
Yeah.
kind of broke a lot of bones, did all that kind of stuff. Do you think that was intrinsically like in you, that belief and confidence, or did that come from like your parents or your brothers, or like how do you think you got that?
Yeah, I feel fortunate. I was the fourth out of 5 sons, and so I got to learn a lot from their life experience. But my dad wasn't a teacher, but he was a doer, and so we
Mm.
just got to watch. And so I think a lot of that confidence, he had a high confidence himself, and I think some of that was instilled in all of us actually. And then we got to firsthand witness someone accomplishing at a high level with high confidence.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know what, if my dad can do this, if I do the right things, I should be able to do whatever I want. And my grandpa, same thing. He was a hustler, entrepreneur on both sides, that they were really successful at what they were able to do. And my great grandpa, like, and so it's like I feel like our bloodline has shown a lot of reasons to be confident in what is possible. And also, I think all the brothers we have it where um, we feel grateful to take on challenges, and we can do hard, and we do hard as a family, and we like it. So
It's awesome. What role does God and faith play in your life?
um always striving to have God be number one for my life. I, like, if you want to talk about confidence, it's all from God. And I've shared this before, but there's a scripture that I had on my mirror for a long time in my life, and it's all about, you know, in the scriptures it talks about, don't worry about what you'll eat tomorrow or what you drink or what you'll wear, for God knows all those things. God knows everything that you need. And this is my favorite promise that I've found in the scriptures that has meant a lot to me. And so with God knowing all these things, Jesus makes the promise of, if you put God and his righteousness first, all these things will be added unto you, which essentially means anything and everything that you need in life, if you are trying to put God first, he will make sure that you are taken care of. And that helps me have the abundance to tolerate higher risk as well as take chances, because my ultimate board advisor, my ultimate leader is an all-knowing God that can make, the ocean move and split. And so I've found it's like one of the most fundamental things to cleave into God, and he's going to help your internal and external growth in all aspects. Does that mean I'm perfect at it in any shape or form? I think I'm far from it, but I do strive every day to have God be my number one priority.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I was listening to, who Lyle Phillips is. He's a pastor
I don't.
out of Nashville, but I was listening to a podcast on him, and he was kind of talking about his faith journey and how, like, our relationship with God, like being a Christian, it is interesting, because I think a lot of people think it's a safer thing, but really it is like you're taking risk, right? You're taking a leap to do this, and but I think it's a cool perspective you had of, like, it allows you to take that risk because you have the faith that he's going to take care of you no matter what. Because I'm a big believer in the fact that, like, when we have like an idea or a dream, like everybody has dreams, right? I was just at the gym with my buddy today, and he was kind of talking to me about some struggles he was having and work, whatever. And I was like, well, what's your dream? Like, what do you want to do? Because I don't think anybody really asks that question. And I believe that, like, our ideas and dreams come from God, and it's important to execute on them. And most of the time when you do, it's a very uncertain path, which is very interesting to me, because you'd think it'd be more certain. And maybe in the long run it is, but we can't tell the future. So it's like we're putting so much faith in him to allow us to do these things, to pursue these things. But that's something I think about a lot, when I have
the word faith is an action. Faith without action, or faith without works, is dead. So when I think of faith, it's like, what moving action do I need to be doing to showcase that I believe and trust in God and the bigger picture of everything, and what's God's will? It's going to be better than whatever I can come up with. So leaning on that is so powerful, but the uncertainty comes with, why we're here, and it's not to know everything, but he shows us just enough. And the scripture where there's Moses, where he parts the sea before, and then I'm trying to remember who it is who has to walk in the water before the water starts parting. And that path is shown. But I think majority of cases, it's almost always that second scenario where we need to be walking into this pathway that we don't fully understand, but we have been shown in our hearts, our souls, and in our gifts and talents that this is a path that we need to go, that is totally uncertain. And that's just part of life, And so I think the principle of faith is it's really beautiful, but it's not easy. It's simple, but not easy.
What you kind of mentioned, I guess there was a few years when you kind of fell away, then you kind of came back, and God kind of reached for you. Tell me about that experience for you.
Yeah. So after my parents got a divorce, my dad kind of started going to different churches and stuff. And it was like, okay, so we're kind of doing that. Okay. And a couple years later, after they got a divorce, I still wasn't really sure what had all happened, why they got a divorce. And
Because how old were you at that time?
I was in seventh grade,
Okay. Yeah.
whenever that is.
Like
But
11.
yeah.
Yeah, 12.
And then a couple years go by, and I'm in St. George with my dad, and he sends me a text this one night. And um, there's a couple versions of how I can share this, and I'll take it more the just straightforward. But my dad shares this text with me. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something tomorrow that's going to change your life forever." And at this time, I was like thinking he's going to marry someone, and I'm like, "Oh, freak, what is happening?" So there was a little bit of confusion there. We go on this hike. He starts telling me all these things. The conclusion of it is he's like, "Hey, I'm actually gay, and so I'm attracted to men." I'm like, "Didn't see that coming. You're this like built dude that just raised 5 kids." And at first I thought he was going to marry this person, and it was like, "Oh, phew, that's like that person had like 8 kids." And I was like, "Oh." It was kind of a relief when he told me that he was going through that, and that
Hmm.
was just um a little interesting part of my journey. And then it kind of it sat in with me, the magnitude of what he told me. And in my mind, I felt like I only understood that God doesn't like gay people, which is completely incorrect, but
Yeah.
that's what my thought process was. And so I was like, I can either follow this God guy that I really don't know or care about that much, or my dad's in a hard spot and I want to help him. And I felt like there was no in between of that. And so that put me in this journey of kind of like, screw whatever's going on up there. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it's a real thing. And
So that falling away kind of came from almost like the negative belief of what you thought kind of God was
yeah,
like, right?
I felt like I had two options, which is not accurate.
Yeah.
And decided to go with one of the options, and that was to love and try and help my dad with no certainty of what that would look like.
Yeah. And then when you thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you I guess what did the path look like for you kind of gaining the correct knowledge and character of God, like you
Yeah.
were saying?
Well, it took some years. It was from, I don't know, everything changed in one night when I was 17, I think. And I had always been doing homework with one of my best friends, and I guess he started going to these Sunday night things with one of our other friends. And he's like, "Hey, after we do homework, I'm going to go to this place where they kind of talk about God and stuff, and it's actually really cool." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like the worst thing ever." Like, I hope you have
That
fun
sounds
tonight.
boring.
Yeah. And then he asked me again the next week, and I was like, "All right, man, like sure, I'll come with you." And I was in this living room, and I I just felt something as people were talking, and I had a moment where it was piercing that God is real and that He loves me, and it shook me to my core where I started crying in front of a bunch of people. And like, other things were going on where I was like, I don't cry in front of friends, I don't do that, but I just got pierced to my soul that God is real and He loves me. So what does that mean to my world? And I remember I came home that night to my mom, and it was like 12:30. I woke her up. I'm like, "Mom, all that stuff that you've been talking about forever, it's real. God's real. And she said in that moment, she saw like a change in me physically, that I looked different than before. And that was where the trajectory with faith and all that started. It didn't start with knowing anything about um, religion or any of that stuff. It just started with a clear belief that God is real and he loves me. And it's something I can't deny, and I never will. Cross my fingers. And if I do, if you hear me later, like, someone call me out, because I know to my soul that God's real and he loves me.
That's awesome, and that's something I I think about a lot when it comes to, you know, faith journeys. It's interesting because everybody's kind of on a different part of that journey. I Another quote I heard from that same guy was, someone's different 100%. Like when you're given 100% to God, 100% looks different to every individual, right?
Totally.
And but something I think about a lot lately is that, like, the word surrender, like surrendering outcomes, surrendering expectations, right? And I think it's a tough thing for people to do, especially when you hear, you might hear a cookie cutter story of like something that happened in the Bible, or a story someone shares that maybe you went through a similar thing, but it didn't happen for you the way it happened for them. And
Totally.
I think so much of it is just not comparing and just surrendering, because I think at that moment, like for you, you were probably just like at the end of yourself, kind of like what Forrest Frank says, he was at the end of himself, and then he found they're like, okay, like God loves me, loves all of his children. And then, okay, now what? With that knowledge,
Yeah.
now what? And then you move forward with that. That's a really cool story. So what for you, what would you say is your legacy? What do you want to be known for?
Yeah. Something I care about a lot, and I learned this on my mission. And just a preface to it, before I went on my mission, it was actually really hard for me because I was really excited to start businesses, and I had this big life plan, and I was planning on retiring at 35 and traveling the world with my family. And that's like what I wanted to do. And that was the plan. I remember being on my mission, and I was just reading the scriptures, and I had a clear thought that wasn't my own thought. And it was essentially, Jackson, your life purpose here is to positively influence hundreds of thousands of people's lives, to help them make a pivotal change that will forever upgrade the quality of who they are. And when that hit me, I I was taken back and realized I got a lot of work to do, and not just in a financial freedom to go travel the world, but um, so to your question, the legacy that I want to leave is, one, I need to fulfill my potential and the reason why I'm personally here. And legacy, I think it's one thing to, create the man of value and leadership, and help other people. But I think it's even more beautiful to create a legacy of a family where your yourself and your kids are making a big impact and leading and helping the world however that feels right for each of them. And then their kids and grandkids make that impact because of the things that you instilled to those future leaders. And so I heard it from someone else actually on the podcast, and I love it. But if the third generation is executing and living a fulfilled life where they're giving to God and they're giving to the world and adding value and being a leader for good, 3 generations down the line, you've got a legacy. And so that's what I strive for. I need to fulfill my personal life purpose, and I hope to train the future generations of my family and posterity of what's possible and how to live fulfilled.
When you talk about the word like potential, like reaching your potential, because a lot of times I talk about that and I talk about it in more of maybe a worldly sense of like being, you know, as fit as you possibly can or making as much money as you possibly can.
Well, I
Like
think you've hit
what
the
is your
potential on those biceps. So
yeah. What do you feel like your definition of potential?
yeah. Um, you know, uh, just back to that statement of my life purpose and helping someone make a pivotal change that will forever help them upgrade the quality of their life. I think one of the biggest upgrades is helping people understand that they're a child of God and they let Christ into their world. And so I think that that's probably around my potential, something around that as well. I expect, and I'm a dreamer, and I think, anyone, if you dream that you're gonna make $1 million, you're not gonna dream to have like you're not gonna make $2 million. You're not gonna go above your dream. And there's different moments and things, but I I I believe I have some high expectations for myself, and um yeah, I plan to make $500 million on a financial standpoint, because I believe, and it's not the case always, but um money follows value. And so the more money that you typically are making is contributing to the world, and you can have that be a very positive thing. And so I expect that to be a part of my journey. And um spiritually, I want to be led, and I want to do God's will. And that's where it's like the certainty isn't always clear, but I want the certainty from God and for myself is that he can trust that I will always do his will for my life. And I think that's going to bring any bigger outcome than anything I could wish for.
That's so cool, man. I'm excited for people to hear that. When it, I think me and you, we have a common friend, Trevor Farms. You know
Yeah.
Trevor? Yeah. So he was in
Love
my
Trevor.
steak for a while. Super good dude. I had him on the podcast. He's like my third or fourth guest. But so when I first met him, he gave me that book, Aspire. I don't know if you read it before. I can't remember the author's name. I always forget. But he's friends with the author because he's out in St. George. And I read that book. That was probably that book was like a big pivotal moment for me. The subtitle is like The Power of Words.
Mm.
And I think words are very important because if taken out of context, things can mean something totally different.
Totally.
It's kind of like scripture. When people translate it in a different way, it's like taken way out of context, and then you have a bunch of issues. But there's the word in there that just was screaming at me was the word passion, and that's kind of where I got the idea for the podcast. Because the word passion, I guess the Greek term, what do you call that? Derivative of it is sacred suffering. And I thought that was just so powerful, mostly because I think anything in life worth achieving, whether it be on the spiritual side, temporal, I guess all things are spiritual technically, right? But it's really difficult, and it's a difficult path
100%.
to go down. But for you, what do you think is the hardest thing you've ever done?
I think losing a loved one, a family member, is hands down the hardest experience I've gone through in my life for sure. And I felt like I had an okay amount of trials before that I was like, okay, I can have passion. I can suffer a decent amount. And losing a father um, just hits on a whole new level of hard, losing a loved one. And so going through that, uh, I would I would say is I mean, it's like a hands down thing of hard. I'm also in a way grateful for it, which sounds weird and dumb at times, but I've gotten to meet and talk with a lot of people. Um, my dad has been an ongoing inspiration for me that I get to honor in my work that I do, and so I feel like with that suffering, it really did turn into a passion to help people through the suffering that I went through, and it's been beneficial to myself and other people. So that's that's what I would say is the hardest thing that I've went through.
Yeah, I honestly can't even imagine. Sometimes when I'm, and this is kind of silly, but when I'm in kind of a slump where I just feel I want to complain a lot, I sometimes imagine like, my kids or my wife, oh gosh, um, being taken away. Yeah, I'm sure that's by the way, my wife and kids are not dead. But I'm sure that's you know, a big trial, you know. How do you feel like that has how do you feel like that's strengthened you or helped you when it comes to what you're pursuing right now?
Um, it's given me a lot of purpose. Um, I think any trial that someone goes through, um, you can find positive and negative. A lot of trials are slanted a lot more negative, and you really need to search for the positive. But I believe it's just helped me have so much purpose, and it gave me a little bit more direction and a little bit more certainty of what really matters. And I from that trial, I've learned what matters, like to a core. And so I'm trying to help the core issues that humans go through and the best ways to help them. And so that I think it's given me purpose in direction instead of just going out and starting any random business or working in any random thing. It helped show me the vehicle that honestly brings more fulfillment than about any other thing is really passing on those stories. It changes the identity of people, and like your grandpa leaving his words of inspiration will one day be able to you know um, touch one of your grandkids in a way that he might have been on his last day, and those words you know remain in his mind of what, if they can get through this, then I can get through this, and it can give and be the push for the healing for everything that is needed. A hard thing that people don't really understand very well is generational trauma, and we have this thing, and I won't dive in too deep, but one things that is attached to our DNA is our passed down trauma, which is really crazy. And
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know how it all works, but it's a real thing. And so, say you had a grandpa or great grandpa in the army, like you can have leftover PTSD trauma reactions that you're reacting poorly because of something that happened in the past that was never taken care of. And so this also helps, get through the heart of why you are how you are. And it can help you know how to resolve the family issues going down. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a long answer, but it's brought a lot of purpose. And I feel like I'm working on some of the most important things that I can work on as a person to help other people.
Yeah. Well, Jaxon, dude, thank you so much for doing this, for coming on.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
has been a pretty special episode. So thank you.
Oh, I'm honored to be your guest, and thanks for bringing me on.